Well, welcome everybody. As you come in, we'd love for you to put your name in the chat and where you're coming from here, where you are. I see people that have been in our sessions before. So welcome to the 9 and 9 UDL webinar series. We're really excited to be running this series again. So as you come in, please add your names to the chat and where you're from, and that'll help us. Hi, Tom Tobin. And it's snowing. Oh my gosh, snowing in Pennsylvania. Yikes. Yeah, and it's windy here in Connecticut is where we're broadcasting from today. So again, as people come in, we'd love for you to share where you're coming from, your name. We have Tracy, who is at, St. Bonaventure. We have somebody from Louisville, Kentucky, Wheeling, West Virginia, Michigan, where it's snowy. Thank you, Catherine. Keep sharing where you're from. New York, Stony Brook. Hi, Diana, and a Diana that is spelt like my name. Welcome, Diana. We have many people signed up. Hi, Anna from Ontario. Nice to have you with us today. We're very, very excited about this session. So welcome to everybody. And again, as you come in, please share your name. So we have Maggie from North Carolina, it looks like, and just tons and tons. It's snowing and freezing in Buffalo. There you go. Well, what would we expect from Buffalo? We have Carrie Morin from Connecticut, who formerly was at Goodwin. Hi, Carrie. And here we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because we love to start on time. So I am Diana LaRocco, and I am going to start us off by sharing a little bit about the 9 and 9 Overtime UDL 3.0 webinar series. So a year ago, we started a webinar series with UDL version 2. And version 3 arrived, and here we are with another series. The series will we have 14 sessions that'll run through February of 2016. We're absolutely thrilled. We had lots of interest in people who wanted to participate, so we're very excited about that. A little bit about Goodwin. It's been 2016 that Goodwin adopted Universal Design for Learning as its pedagogy. And here we are. Hard to believe, Allison. It's almost 10 years from when we launched UDL at Goodwin. And in that time, we have trained 14 cohorts of faculty, 7 of which are Goodwin faculty, and then we have external faculty cohorts that we have trained as well. So we're very, very excited. UDL is our mission. It's what we do as part of our everyday work. I want to call your attention. Rob Legary is going to be moving slides for Allison today, who is our speaker, and I'll introduce Allison in a minute. And Rob is going to also put some things in the chat. So be looking at the chat. There's some links there. Importantly, I want to draw your attention to the call for proposals for this will be our 4th annual UDL conference at Goodwin University. It's a very boutique, small conference. We're really excited to have this running for a 4th time. And the call for proposal, the link is in the chat. So please, we welcome the call. We also welcome people who might want to volunteer to be reviewers. If you have experience reviewing proposals, we would love to have you join us. And in that case, you can email Rob, who's going to put his email address in the link, and Rob will take your information. So we want to make this as a robust a conference as possible. So again, we invite you to submit proposals. We are recording this session, so feel free to turn your cameras on or off. We ask that you keep your mics muted. We will use the chat for answering questions. I'll be monitoring the chat. I assume Paula will also monitor the chat, who is here from our Center for Teaching Excellence. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Allison. Rob, I hope I didn't forget anything. I think we're good, right? Okay, so let's go. All right, so maybe I'll move my PowerPoint forward and maybe I won't. There we go. Okay, I hope people can see that. So today, Allison Posey is going to talk about and facilitate an exploration of UDL engagement principles, sustaining effort and persistence. And she's really going to look at the theory behind this guideline and particularly brain science. And she's going to share more in a minute. But what's just so wonderful for me today as I introduce Allison is I've known Allison since 2012 was the first opportunity I had to work with her. She's an incredibly skilled facilitator, knows so much about UDL as she works as CAST, and she's written a couple of books, Mind, Brain, and Education, which is published through, I believe, ASCD, the American Association for School, right, Allison? And then a publication.
I never know what it stands for.
It's wait a minute. Yeah, anyways.
Teachers and administrators.
Yeah, Association for Supervision, Curriculum and Development. There we go. I got it. And then CAST. She's also published a book in CAST, which is her latest publication, and that's Unlearning. And I am going to stop sharing my screen and stop talking and let Allison take over. So again, please share where you're from if you haven't done so already, and go ahead and Allison, Rob, if you want to share, that would be great.
And I'll make sure, Rob, if you have a new link to the slide, can you just make sure permissions are open? I think I got it on my end. If anyone has there are two links, it seems, going around. Can you all give us a thumbs up if you're able? Just want to make sure you have access to all the things in case you stop listening to me right away, which is all good if you do. Okay, you got it now. Amazing. Okay, good. Welcome, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for being here, whether it's morning, noon, or evening for you. Really looking forward to talking to you about sustaining effort and persistence. This has been one that I've enjoyed kind of thinking about and getting my head around. And since I thought maybe I would know several of you, I thought I would give a picture from the past. I have a picture up here. We were kind of laughing the other day about old hairstyles that maybe shouldn't come back. And I don't know how many of you had the bowl haircut, but I had the classic bowl haircut. It looks like my mom or dad set, a bowl on my head and just cut around it. And I have a cowlick on the top right by my forehead. So it always makes my hair, kind of boof up a little bit. And so I thought I would include that picture. And if any of you do have any favorite or unfavorite hairstyles, I thought that could be a fun welcome as you're kind of joining and settling yourselves and making sure you have access to the slide. If you also want to share a favorite good or bad haircut, when we think of sustaining effort and persistence, I will tell you that having to go to school the day after a bad haircut was a whole other kind of effort and persistence. So I am inviting you all to open your mind to thinking about all the ways and all the different experiences you've had where sustaining effort and persistence has been really important. Of course, I'll continue to ground it in thinking about education and classroom practices and, educating our learners, but this happens everywhere. And sometimes just the effort to get to the class, the effort to grade the papers, the effort to, get the exercise you need. I remember my brother recently saying, it takes a lot of effort just to maintain the body each day. Yes, it does. So how can UDL help us think about all these things we really want to do to sustain effort and persistence? Because as many of you probably have experienced, when you do, you get to the good stuff. I'm an avid hiker, and sometimes hiking, I live just south of the White Mountains in New Hampshire. Some of those 4,000-foot peaks are really intense. I know those of you from the West Coast are laughing at our 4,000 feet high mountains, but they are real because we're starting at sea level. But once you get to the top and you see the view, it's worth it. And even just thinking about all that it took, the preparation, the collaboration, the materials to get to those moments where you go, oh, this is so worth it. That's what we're here for. That effort and persistence, I think, is where it all is. So if we shift to the next slide, I just always like to start with the goals. So we're going to share and discuss the UDL effort and persistence guidelines. We're going to always keep thinking about strategies. I know you already think about this in your work. I also want to invite us to keep considering the data of impact. When you are intentionally designing to sustain effort and persistence, what are you looking for? What are those data points that are meaningful for you? What does good effort and persistence look, sound, and feel like? Do you know it when you experience it? So I invite you to think about, we'll be thinking about those three things today. And you took some time out of your day to be here. So I just wanted to see if you all brought any goals with you, anything you want to make sure we address or touch on. And even if we don't today, I always like to follow up and make sure that we are able to, you're able to get what you need and what you wanted today. So let me know. Again, just put a little note in the chat. What are your goals for today? What do you hope to gain out of thinking about this UDL effort and persistence guideline? Oh, but if we could go back to that other slide there, Rob, you jumped the gun. Thank you. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. Just seeing if there are any goals you all have. Oh, thank you so much. This is a great one. Learning about how to communicate good teaching through UDL. Great. Finding evidence-based ways to talk about colleagues, about pre-engagement strategies. It's very important to not skip. Great, great. Sometimes just the mindset of, I'm going to get up to the top of that mountain, that mindset. What do you have to do to pre-engage? Super interesting, super interesting. And I also invite you to activate your background. So this is that next slide there, Rob. So even to come to this conversation, there are probably a few things that you did just to make sure that you can show up and pay attention and put forth effort and persistence for an hour. So I know I got my Post-it notes and my pencil. That to me helps support my working memory, which I know can be a challenge. I have my cup of water. I have my timer going so I can keep track of my time. And I do want to give a shout out. Here is a perfect example of, I actually showed up pretty relaxed for this because I knew I had a team with me today. So Diana and Rob and I have worked together before, and I kind of was like, wow, this is luxurious to get to show up and just get to speak with you all about this topic because there's a team here. So those are a few things I did to prepare for being here today. I did make sure I had lunch. I made sure I moved around a little bit. I'll probably stand up midway through to just, again, sustain our effort. We're not going to back down on our goals, right? We want to make sure we keep going to the whole hour, the whole time together to keep growing and getting the things together. And that's going to take some very intentional strategies. And just because I stand up at a certain time doesn't mean everyone needs to exercise and move at that point. That's just where I am, right? So what are some of the things you all did to prepare to be here today? Yeah, that trust in your team's a big one, isn't it, Brian? Yeah, yeah. And sometimes getting back to thinking about that team might be where the sticky point is. Someone had an early lunch. Excellent. Someone made a to-do list with priorities. Yes. Oh, arranging activities for kiddos who are off from school today. Yes. As much as we try to have all of those, practicing mindfulness. Amazing. Actually, that mindfulness one is an interesting one. I've tried to start giving myself a 5-minute breath before meetings, and it's been really helpful. Just 5 minutes to not do anything is really a gift you give to yourself. Part of effort is restful and relaxing, right? Taking a pause. Yes. Super important. Super important. These are great. These are so good. So I always like to think about the brain. If we, the next slide's not riveting, but it is, again, my prompt for just thinking a little bit about what happens in the brain when we think about effort and persistence. And the thing about the brain, and I know those of you who know me probably know what I'm going to say, the brain is this huge energy hog. It takes over 20% of the body's energy just goes to the brain alone. So thinking and learning is literally as active. You burn as much ATP, that energy chemical that, where the third bond breaks and you get the energy. It is as much energy as playing a football game. You burn calories, you burn energy when you are in thought, when you're thinking, when you're persisting, when you're trying, when you're putting forth effort. It takes energy. It's part of why we get hungry, we get tired. It's our body saying you need glucose because you are using it. We don't necessarily see the sweat like we do when we're physically exercising, but it is real and it can be measured. And that energy needs to be replenished. So sometimes even just taking stock in your day on when are those points where you're getting energy and you're doing the things that fill your cognitive load. So I know I like to use the visual image of as I go through the day to day, my brain starts to feel more and more full. So, you maybe wake up and you have emails coming in when you first get to work and you're teaching a course and then you have a department meeting and right there, your head might be full from just those things, right? The thinking, the learning, the interacting, the here's what I need to do, the to-do lists. And we're each going to relieve that energy in our own ways. I mean, all of us have physiologies that need rest, that need food. But I know one thing that I do to replenish my energy is I need to move. That helps me. A quick walk around the block, a quick walk around the school. That works for me. That helps me feel like I'm clearing my head a little bit. And I didn't used to feel like it was okay to take that time to do that little thing, that 10-minute walk, that brain break is real. And so just from a physiological standpoint, this is really important for our learners. A 50-minute class, I know those Monday, Wednesday, Friday courses always seem to go by so quickly. It's a long time in terms of just the neurological energy of, paying attention. And so thinking about how opportunities like turning and talking to neighbors, how quiet reflection or journaling, how even moving around and having more active a case study that students are discussing, that's a shift in the brain energy. And doing things like taking notes or recording your lecture or having a graphic organizer, all of those are really helpful for scaffolding that cognitive load. And it has an impact on working memory, which is holding information in mind as you're trying to have a conversation. And so using those tools literally alleviates cognitive load, and that can help with effort and persistence. So this is real for the brain. The brain gets very tired. And when we allow those default mode networks, those are the networks that go into action when we're not paying attention, but are really important for just maintaining our own body, making connections to ourselves, and even making empathetic connections with others. It's really important. So I do want to note that when I say effort and persistence, it is both attentive and restful, and those are both required. So we'll just pause there and see if there are any questions or additional comments or notes that you want to make, just thinking about the brain, the importance of just this brain, understanding this brain when it comes to effort and persistence. Yes, Steve, it's an excuse to be able to prioritize sleep and naps, 100%. I say that as a joke, but also completely serious. And I will say naps don't work for me. I don't like them, so I prefer to move. And that's a perfect example of, you get your energy back in your way. And I respect that and value that and might try that. And then ultimately, we want to let learners do what they need. Scaffolding learning. This is why it makes sense. Yep. Chunking our information so it's not all at once. Yep. It's so important. John Medina years ago wrote a book about the brain, and he, recommended 10 minutes of new information, and that's enough for the brain. Oh, this is great too. Reminding students how hard learning is. Yes. Yes. We think it just comes easy for some students, but that's just because they've had the background already. So it's always hard the first time, right? It's always hard when we're wrestling with it, learning the new things. Oh, look, we're getting variability in the napping. I love it. I love it. And that does bring me back to goals. When the goal is to replenish some of your cognitive energy, there can be flexibility in how we do that. Having active learning activities, helping students reflect on their learning. These are great comments going in the chat. It also helps instructors to connect to students. Yep. And find the meaning in our teaching. That can alleviate cognitive load too, right? When you find it meaningful. Steve's jumping in and defending his naps. Steve, we love that you're taking naps. It's so good. Well, let's jump into the UDL guidelines here. If we take a look at the UDL guidelines, and the link will just UDL guidelines, .cas.org is the site. So if you want to check out that site, the UDL guidelines, we're zooming into the sustaining effort and persistence guidelines. So it's situated in the engagement column. So when we think of the nervous system, we think of how it takes information in, how it acts and does things, but then the integration of it, the valuing of that information coming in is largely what that engagement network is doing. And so when we're motivated to persist and sustain effort, that's largely coming from networks that are right connected to our values. What is valuable to the nervous system? What's deemed safe? So when you're at a fight or flight risk, for example, the middle part of the brain is going to be strategic and being like, this may not be a good place for you, get out of here. But if if you appraise a situation as, oh, actually, this is good for me. I belong here. I'm interested in this. It really is a time for that appraisal, those appraisal networks that are deep in the brain. I'm trying to kind of show you the deepness of them in the brain with my hand. Then those are then going to set the nervous system up to be able to do that kind of learning, that kind of attention, that kind of strategic action. So these three UDL principles interconnect really nicely, and sustaining effort and persistence is grounded in thinking about them in line with those engagement networks. And so I thought I would kind of share two examples. One's a little silly because I want to share that we think about this kind of like the mountain hiking example that I give. You can think about this UDL framework in every aspect of your life. I mean, Diana, Rob, and I, we've had many conversations about all the different ways UDL is connected to our life outside of our jobs and curriculum and teaching. And so one time I remember doing monkey trunk. So those are like obstacle courses where you climb on ropes and you slide on zip lines and you're really up high. And that kind of experience it took a lot of effort and persistence for me to want to monkey trunk. Maybe you want to think of an academic example, like maybe you have your students write an evidence-based or an evidence-supported paper on the Battle of Hastings, or you might think of some content example that you're thinking of, and bring that with you today as we talk about this guideline for sustaining effort and persistence. So I'm going to share what the considerations are. So we used to call these checkpoints, but then people thought they had to check them off and do all of them. So in this recent version that came out in July of 2024 of the UDL guidelines, we now call them considerations because they are just that. They are research backed and they are just suggestions really to spark your thinking. So if one of the barriers or sticking points you're facing with your learners is on effort and persistence, maybe your students do all the easy problems, but they're skipping the hard ones. Or maybe you notice students checking out when they have to really think critically or, dive into a harder level. You could jump to this, kind of go, I'm using all this ableist language. You could explore whether you want to hop or jump or run or leap into thinking about this UDL sustaining effort and persistence guideline. So we think about clarifying the meaning and purpose of goals. So again, that's just basically sharing, here's where we're going. We're trying to get up to the top of that tree, right? We're trying to get to California. We are trying to write an essay that has really good evidence support in it. Whatever it is you're embarking on, you have to know the destination in order to know how to intentionally design. And I know a lot of times people will be nervous. Oh my gosh, if I tell students the goal, they're not going to discover it, or it's going to reduce the creativity. And I will argue that the opposite actually happens. When you know the goal, when you know what you're striving to get toward, the nervous system literally rallies around that, and it looks to try to put things together to get to that. And if you know you're getting to California, I'm starting in Boston. I saw someone here is from LA. We're going to plan and prep very differently, right? To get to that destination based on that goal. But if we don't know the goal, I might not know whether or not to bring the dog with me, right? Do I need to, bring extra cash for snacks and to fill up the tank? Or, could I take my bike there? The goal is so critical. So I love that when you think of sustaining effort and persistence, if you don't know what you're trying to do, you're probably not going to do it, right? At least you're not going to want to persist toward it. So then the second consideration is to think about how then you're optimizing the challenge and support. So if you know the goal is to get to California and I'm like, good luck getting there, you got nothing. I'm not giving you any supports to get to the destination, right? And when you know the destination, you know the different kinds of supports you can give. So, again, the music, the playlist, the friends, the progress monitoring along the way. There are all these different supports we can give along the way. This second I almost said checkpoint, consideration is greatly impacted by Vygotsky's zone of proximal development and Csikszentmihalyi's flow. So I'll talk about that more in just a moment. But it's really important that we think about optimizing that challenge and support, right? That word optimizing is so critical there, that we want to have enough supports there that learners keep going. But we don't want to have too many where they're bored and they're not actually taking action. And because it's going to be different for each student, that's why we provide a couple choices, right? That's like the gist of UDL right there. Yes, it's the learning. I see there's something here. Oh, whose goal? Thank you, Steve, for asking that. So the goal is the learning objective. Yep, whatever it is you want students to know, do, or care about. And students could also bring their own goals. So kind of like I modeled at the beginning, here are the 3 things I'm looking to do today. Hopefully you're in the right place. But I invited you to also bring your own goal, to try to make your own connection to why you're here today. So again, that was very intentional on my part to clarify that. If at some point we're not reaching those goals, just like the GPS is recalculating, we'll want to recalculate, right? And rethink about our conversation. So that's a great, yes. So the instructor or the objective, whatever it is that you want the learners to know, do, and care about. Could be the purpose of a meeting, of a department agenda, a department meeting, the purpose of a group getting together on campus. I'm seeing some great comments here.
Did you see the comment, Allison, about why is that the row called support?
Yes. Okay. I'll get into that in just a moment. Perfect. An agency. Good. Okay. Yes. So you all are jumping ahead. Yes. I will take those. I've written them down so I'm going to do a couple more things and then we'll get to those. So the third consideration we're thinking about is how we are fostering collaboration, interdependence, and collective learning. And this to me ends up being, this has been actually a really important consideration for me in my life, because I'll recognize sometimes what I actually need is someone there with me. I will tell you, I hate doing taxes. Just saying taxes kind of sets my nervous system into a little minor fight or flight. I don't feel like I understand. And I could describe some of the barriers for you. And if I have a buddy with me, it becomes fun. It's not that I'm not going to do my taxes. I'm going to do them. But wow, if I have that one person there and we have a tax party together, all of a sudden that collaboration, well, as I mentioned at the beginning, the teamwork that went into this webinar, all of a sudden it allows us to do a little more than we did before because you have that collaboration. It can be really important. And sometimes collaboration oftentimes needs to be scaffolded, right? We expect that students just know how to collaborate or know what good collaboration is. But I would argue most of the time they don't. And a lot of times we don't. We just say, we want good collaboration, but we don't necessarily say what the specifics are of that. So that's something I'd also be kind of interested to dig into when we use these UDL guidelines and these UDL considerations. It invites us as educators, whether we're in the same department, teaching the same content, or teaching from around the world, completely different countries. These UDL guidelines invite us to get really specific. What do you mean about foster collaboration? How do you foster collaboration in your work? And how do you know it's happening? How do you measure the evidence of success? So I'll just pause there and let's open up the chat about that third little UDL consideration there: foster collaboration, interdependence, and collective learning. What do you all do? How does this look, sound, and feel like in your settings? Oh, I'm glad you're finding these examples to be helpful. Someone else maybe doesn't like doing taxes. How do you all foster collaboration, interdependence, collective learning? How do you know if it's going well? This is great. So we're getting to some roles. So there's accountability. Everyone is chipped in a little bit. Yeah. If we were having true, we're having a little collaboration here, but if we really wanted it to be a team, we would want everyone. Yep. Yep. Sharing ideas beyond even the required, making time for it. Yep. That's great. That's great. Gamification and feedback. Yes. Peer review. Creating tasks and roles. Self-assessment. Oh, look at all these. These are amazing. You have so many ideas. Just providing the opportunity for discussions. Creating communities. That's intentional, right? Reflection time. So you all could only, we could all say, we're going to all go just think about this one UDL consideration. And we're going to try one of these things. We're now going to provide time for reflection, let's say, after a discussion. And we would want to see if our design is supporting the effort and persistence of our students. If we assign group roles, or if we, allow for peer review, let's say, does it actually support the effort and persistence? So we can take any of these UDL considerations, develop a shared understanding of what we think they mean, what's meaningful for us in them, try it out and measure it. And it gets so fun then, right? So we start to get really intentional about our design. Amazing. Project checks I'm seeing. Teaching an online course to master students, disappointed by the lack of their constructive collaboration. So then you are going to rate them by the quality of their collaboration. Oh, good. You had explicit criteria. I was just about to ask that, Steve. I was going to say, what was that constructive collaboration? What did it mean? So sometimes those single point rubrics of really saying, here's what I mean by that, can be super helpful. And I'm going to actually take a moment and I'm going to tell a story I wasn't planning on telling, but I actually think it's going to be helpful here. So some of you may know my son used to be a very competitive tennis player. He, was nationally ranked and all that. And he's a lovely kid, but wow, he was a bad sport when he was playing tennis. And he was young, he was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And we would really get on him as coaches. And I, you got to be a good sport. You got to be a good sport. Come on, you really weren't a good sport there. And midway through, I went, oh my gosh, I never defined what it meant to be a good sport. And once we came up with 5 things that good sports do, all of a sudden my son started doing it, and he was sustaining his effort and persistence in new ways because he was thinking about that sportsmanship. And there were differences. I would argue he doesn't think there's enough data, and that's fair, that I think because he had a better understanding of sportsmanship and his own physiology, he was playing better tennis. That might be a bit of a stretch, but interesting to think about some of the outcomes that you get as a result of clarifying that language, sharing that understanding, and then fostering the collaboration around it. Anyway, I'll pause and see if there are any other questions or comments. Great. And self-reflection and the group sharing. Excellent. Excellent. And then the last consideration within this, so we're talking and fostering collaboration that helps fosters that belonging and that community. And then we want to offer that action-oriented feedback. And someone had mentioned that also earlier in the chat. That specific feedback is so important. When we know when we just give an A or great job, it's meaningless and students find it irrelevant. But when we say something really specific, like those transition sentences really supported your thesis, all of a sudden, students are focusing in on that thesis statement, right? They're really thinking more about. So really think deeply about how you can give that specific feedback to the learners. And I'll pause for just a minute. On the next slide, I just wanted to do a side-by-side for those of you who are maybe still in the transition from UDL Guidelines 2.0 to 2.2 to 3.0. A couple of the differences. This particular 3.0 got a little more specific in terms of clarifying the meaning of the goals. That stayed the same. But what's really new about these UDL guidelines is a little more focus on that interdependence and that collaboration. So you actually see an entire consideration was added around fostering belonging and community. So again, research really shows that that's a really important aspect to learning, and something that oftentimes in our American systems, individualism is really valued. And there is something really important to that social learning, that social collaboration. And then on the next slide, I added more of the detail. So the first slide of the UDL guidelines, I did not include all the considerations because I just find that text to be so overwhelming. But some of you may kind of contextualize that this engagement guideline focusing on sustaining effort and persistence was in that engagement column. There is a very similar UDL guideline, and it's the one under the action and expression guideline for strategy development. So the strategy development is also about setting goals, anticipating and planning for the challenges, and organizing information and resources to enhance capacity to monitor practice. And I'm going to actually hold off because I think the challenging exclusionary practices isn't quite as connected, but it still is a little bit connected. So these two guidelines are really similar. And I want to say that's exactly right because learning is messy. The brain networks are messy. They're interconnected. You can't have one without the other. And the UDL guidelines are the same way. So a lot of times a design strategy you might incorporate because you're trying to support students to sustain their effort and persistence. It might also help them be a little more strategic in their development of whatever it is they're learning. So I do want to just kind of note and highlight that some of the beauty and sometimes the frustration of the UDL guidelines is that interconnectivity. And it really doesn't matter where you organize your strategies, what you align them to, is it the engagement one or is it the action and expression one? As much as it's important to think about your goals and how those considerations can spark ideas to get your learners to achieve those goals. And here's where I'll point out that we have both that vertical organization of the UDL guidelines, and one of you had asked about that horizontal organization of the UDL guidelines that now it's about access still. And the middle row used to be called building. It's now about supporting. It's a nuance of the word. I will tell you, I still prefer build because I think it's more collaborative. And I think it's more about, it's less about the teacher giving it and supporting it to students. But we are thinking about how our strategies are supporting the expertise in learning, the agency around learning. And so it could be a support that you're doing for yourself, scaffold you're doing for yourself. And I think it's largely what we're often doing already as educators. And then that last column has been renamed to executive functions to recognize that executive functions span all of the networks of the brain, our emotion ones, the representation networks, and the action and expression networks, those strategic networks. So that renaming is, again, just to really help us think intentionally about what those words mean and don't mean. So I'll pause and see if there are any other questions, see if I've addressed the ones that have come. And we've had a little background on this particular UDL guidelines. And now I want to jump into some of the strategies. But I'll pause for questions and reflections here. This is interesting, Steve. I don't know a whole lot of the research around either of the different learning paradigms that you're describing here. So I appreciate you raising them to just help us think about the impact of academic isolation and what that maybe means in terms of learning and constructing learning. And certainly in this digital age of having these phones and being very isolated, I think this particular UDL guideline and the importance of that collaboration is something we're recognizing is actually, we can't lose that, right? It's really, really important. Oh, you all, I'm loving this suggestion for 4.0. Look at this. So I will, yes. So thinking about who. So actually, this version of the UDL guidelines, we did try to think about the who, because initially we had the why, which is the engagement, the what, which is the representation, and the how, which is our action and expression. And in the version 2.2, we didn't have any mention of the who. So we tried to be more intentional in this one to think about all kinds of learners. So instead of provide options, it now says design options. And that design could be done by anyone, right? It could be co-designed. It could be a curriculum designer. It could be a museum designer. It could be a professor designer. You can really fill in it's for anyone, right? And so it's really largely about the learners and how the design is happening to support the learners. And so yes, this comment, the first row used to be more external, and then it was moving more internal. And I think that's a really important way to still think about that. Access is largely what we're providing in the environment, right? We're thinking about options for identities and interest, options for perception, options for interaction. And as we start to move down into the build, support, executive functions, those are more internal, right? Those are more things that the learners themselves are doing. They are thinking about their emotional capacity. They are thinking about their knowledge and their strategy development. The design can always support those. But I do think that thinking about external to internal still works with this new version of the guidelines. Great questions. Oh, and thank you. Tom provided a resource. Great, about those learning paradigms. Excellent. Well, on the next slide, without even looking at the UDL guidelines, I mean, we talked about this already. There are some things that we did to sustain effort, right? You might set up your workspace, you get your body in a good space, you get some of the resources for the demands. Maybe you give yourself a reward, right? Like after I finish and submit my taxes, I reward myself. I go out to my favorite restaurant to eat and a glass of wine. It's, woo. So some of these things you're already doing. So I'm going to invite you to take 30 seconds and in the chat or on your own, just jot down, what do you already do in the design of your materials, your methods to support learners to sustain their effort and persistence? This is just a quick brainstorm. Let's get tons of ideas from each other. Varying the pace, understanding where they started and where they progress so they see the growth. Make the milestones small enough. They can use their space and technology how they want. I know often my students are like, are we allowed to use it? I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Being available for students. Yes, that gives them that feeling of belonging. You're there for them. Even having flexible office hours, recognizing it doesn't have to just be from this 1 hour, not that you need to be available 24/7 to your students. I'm not saying that either, but having a little bit of flexibility of, in the office here, I can do Zooms here and here, a little bit of even asking the students of these three choices, which one do more of you have free to be able to attend office hours? A little bit of that give and take. Asking students to think about their successes. This is great. Normalizing struggle. Yes, learning should be hard. It is hard. Yes, but we're together, right? And we have resources to do it. No one was born knowing how to do the quadratic equation. Used to say that all the time to my kids. And finally, my son was like, oh my gosh, you're right, Mom. Those kids had just done it before. And mistakes are so important to learning. I have to say, from a neuroscience perspective, this is one I've been thinking about a lot. We need mistakes to learn. Yes, yes. Celebrate the little accomplishments. Amazing. And then on the next slide, I did just want to highlight the importance of, in some ways, this UDL guideline is nothing new, right? We know this, that when students don't have any resources for the demands, go write a 3-paragraph essay, sing the Star Spangled Banner in front of your peer, whatever it is, if they don't feel like they have any resources, that's high anxiety. That's not good for learning. But if they feel like the challenge is too low and they have all these resources, they're going to be bored. And there will be variability in every class. No matter how much you try to level students, you will never level them because there will always be variability, always, in every single lesson. And so that is why having a clear goal, video games are experts at this particular UDL guidelines. There's a clear goal. You know what you're trying to do. There are resources to meet the demands, and then you get progress along the way. You get that feedback. That really helps to get into that zone of proximal development where you can actually lose yourself because you are in such a flow space that you are just so engaged in your learning and you are persisting through challenges. You're working, and then you're like, wait, what time is it? I can't believe, right? It's that sweet spot for learning really does come back to this. And hopefully any of the UDL considerations can help us think about how to provide those resources to meet the demands of the tasks. But we have to have the goal. We have to have the clear goal. A lot of times in my work, that's what's missing. And I still teach a course at LaSalle University. I love teaching these courses on inclusive ed to pre-service teachers. It makes my day. But I will tell you all, I still am not satisfied. Oh, on the next slide, please, Rob. Thank you. I'm still not satisfied with how the conversations are going in Canvas. So I've done a couple changes. I used to have kind of the traditional, they would build their background about a topic, and then I would want them to discuss it together. This is an asynchronous, and when we have asynchronous classes, and it used to be, comment on 2 of your peers and ask a thoughtful question and have a catchy subject line, to try to get them to want to read each other's posts and to try to scaffold them to, get a conversation going by asking a specific question. And then I made a shift a couple years ago that really helped. I made it so they would have these discussions and then they would turn in their assignment to me. So it really made their conversations become much more like conversations and not that they were the finished post that then students commented on. It made it so it helped them learn. It helped them learn about how the other students were using the readings and the videos that we were discussing. And so it was a little more messy, that feedback. Why did you use this? Why did you do this? Oh, wait, tell me more about that article you read. So students started to have, I'm not going to say it was perfect, but it was a little bit better conversation in Canvas. So I am still continuing to think about how I can better foster collaboration in discussion groups in Canvas kind of settings. So again, I don't know if you all have any suggestions for how you scaffold collaboration, either in Canvas or maybe it's in a live group session. So the second image that I have on the slide is just students doing a phospholipid bilayer, otherwise known as the bubble lab, in my course. And, again, thinking about how you just set up the space so that students are engaging in collaborative discourse around the rigorous goals. Oh, good. And so doing the opposite, creating assignments that would be turned in. And those are the discussions. Yes, then they get to see each other's. So Sarah, that is what I do. So I'm sorry if I didn't explain that. That's exactly what I do. Yes. They loved commenting on each other's. Amazing. Yes. Oh, Tom, thank you for dropping in zone of proximal development, that idea that you can do a little more when those resources are provided to you. And you have that knowledgeable expert kind of alongside with you. And I'll leave you with this kind of question in terms of this UDL guideline. So on the next slide, I asked the question, as educators, where do we need support with our effort and persistence? So I will tell you, for me, grading is still where I have trouble. I try to have all assignments due on Sunday. So Sundays, I try to do most of my feedback. And I catch myself being very disengaged these days. I used to not be as disengaged. So for me, grading is where I'm using this UDL guideline to think about how sustaining effort, how I can better sustain my effort and persistence in that. So one of the things I found is having my assignments be able to be in different formats, which really aligns to that UDL options for expression and communication. That's actually really helping me. So I'm not just reading. I get to an assignment where students have done a graphic organizer, or they've done a video or a PowerPoint slide, and I'm like, oh, what's this? It's helping them. But it's also helping me persist in something that's been a challenge. Is some of the grading. I've tried doing better at chunking my assignments, so I'm just targeting certain things. I'm not having to necessarily score everything, but on this assignment, I'm looking for this. And that's all I'm giving feedback on. So then it's helping my feedback to be way more action-oriented. I'm also trying to think more about student stress around deadlines and my own stress around deadlines, and how I can start to be a little flexible. I'm starting to really, ask myself what needs to stay in some of these assignments and what can I let go of to, again, make it so I feel like I'm sustaining the effort and persistence in a way that's really giving meaningful feedback to my students, which is what I want. So I'll see what is something you're wrestling with in your work that you think you could use a little extra effort and persistence for. Do you all have any problems of practice, anything you're wrestling with in your teaching and learning that you think this UDL guideline could help give you some ideas? It's grading for you too. I know, right? So let's think about this, right? It's so important. That action-oriented feedback is so important. So those are a couple of the things I'm trying. So let me know if you try something and it's helpful. A challenge is saying you're here to help, but then you get all these requests for help. I could definitely see how that could be a moment of wanting a little more support for effort and persistence, because you want to be there to help. So learning something new or seeing something in a new way, that can definitely be a really important time to get some support for effort and persistence. Oh my gosh, Diana, I think you just have the next book. We should co-author this one. Ungrading strategies. Or has someone already done that? Did one of you here in this session? Uh, I love it. I love it. Well, I invite you all on the next slide. I love still using this is just the blank version of the UDL guidelines. I always go to this version. I will reference the version of the guidelines with all the considerations, but I tend to put my favorite strategies. And remember, oh, it's already been done. Darn it, Tom Tobin, thank you. Ungrading by Susan Bloom. Yep, there it is. There it is. Too good. Oh, look at this. And it's already Catherine's already found that it helped her motivation to grade. Okay. So we will just use these strategies. Amazing. So I invite you all to bring these kind of blank version of the UDL guidelines to your departments, to your teams, share your ideas, and then go try them. And then bring back the data. What happened? What did you notice in terms of your engagement or your learning or your students and their learning? And yes, even if it's only one or two of you, those assessments. So on the next slide, this is, the ultimate putting everything together is you're planning your lesson, your assignment, your syllabus, your thing, whatever it is, where someone will be learning. And you plan it using UDL, and you can get really specific, right? To zoom into a consideration, just one consideration if you want. And then you teach it, you lead it, you facilitate it. And then that reflection, that's so critical. How did it go? Did you notice any difference in students using the tools that you were designing and using the strategies you were integrating? And share those. That is the magic of learning and teaching. That can help sustain effort and persistence when the teaching semester or term, I know a good one, you have 3 terms, can feel really long or really arduous. Those moments of success are so important. They're important for students. They're important for us. And that effort and persistence in the grading, in the design, in this proactive approach to really meet the needs of all of our learners, it's worth it. It's so worth it. So I thank you all for doing that work. I thank you for being here today, for sharing all of these ideas. And we have a few minutes for questions. So I'm also happy to take some questions or keep sharing more book ideas. This is great. Another book suggestion by Josh Eiler, Failing Our Future, How Grades Harm Students. Interesting.
So Rob, can you unshare the screen? And let's there we go, on Spotlight, Allison, and let's see if people have questions for Allison. We have 4 minutes, which would be great. So if you want to unmute, if I could say that, and go ahead and ask a question, or otherwise put it in the chat. I'm sure Allison would love to chat with anybody who has a question. And Tom, thank you. Yeah, Josh Eiler's book, great book. Yeah. How Grades Harm Students. And what you do with your days. She's on LinkedIn. There we go. Thanks for that, Allison. Yep, you're on LinkedIn. Yeah. What do you do? What does she do with her days, right? Allison's busy doing this kind of stuff, right?
That's right. I do. I think about teaching. I think about learning in the brain all the time. I really do. And I love it. It's been 14 years. And I got my degree in mind, brain, and education, and I haven't looked back. I absolutely love this. And yeah, so fun to think about unpacking this topic with you all. Certainly we could do months and months of this.
And we are, lest we forget.
We are. Oh, perfect transition. Yes.
Perfect transition. Yes. So for those that joined later, we are going to run these webinars through February 2026, which is just crazy to think about. Again, for those who joined later. We also have a call for proposals out. So come, submit a proposal. We're looking for proposal reviewers. This is for the Goodwin University. I'm going to say boutique conference because it's a very small conference. So we would love to have you join us. And please, if you'd like to be a reviewer, reach out to Rob Legary, who I think he will put his email. And Allison, there's lots of kudos for you in the chat. People really appreciated what you shared. We're so grateful to have you, as you did the last time, kick off this webinar series. I know, I'm like, yay.
Exciting.
Yay, because it's just really wonderful that you give over your time and that you're willing to share and talk, and appreciate everybody's participation today. And thank you all so very much. We're going to hang here for another couple minutes. And again, if you have a question, pop it in the chat. And we'd love to talk with you if you want to unmute. So we're going to hang here for a couple minutes. And lots of thank yous, Allison, in the chat. Thanks, everybody. This link to this and other recordings will be on Padlet. So stay tuned. And thanks again for joining.